right, welcome everybody. We are recording. We are live with our first edition with Ask Jimmy. I am Derek Bennington. I'm here to just moderate, kind of keep things on track, but this isn't my show. This is all about Jimmy Simeon, owner, founder of Simeon Properties in Clear Lake in Houston. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We do have some people in the background sending us some questions. We're going to address those here at the end, but we do have kind of a theme for today around pricing and inspection and closing and just all of those things that really matter in today's market. So with that said, I want to tee up the room, give the floor to Jimmy here to introduce himself. We also have his second right-hand man, kind of your general, so to speak, of Simeon Properties, Joe Haas Jr. here as well. And who you don't see, who is in the background taking pictures, is Simeon Properties marketing expert, Autumn, who is just a complete badass and is a huge part of that team. So without further ado, Jimmy, this is your show. If you could just start with kind of the 2 minutes of who you are, what you do, why you do what you do, and we'll go from there.
All right, I'm Jimmy Simeon, broker owner of Simeon Properties here in Clear Lake, located on Bay Area Boulevard. Been in the community since 1986, so this area is very personal to me, not just Clear Lake, but Clear Lake and the surrounding areas, all the way to Pearland, Manville, down to Galveston, Friendswood, League City. I've been doing this since 2002 after my career at Enron, so don't hold that against me. I was in corporate finance. We opened our office, though, in 2009, and we just enjoyed taking care of people. Again, I think it's very personal for me, because I grew up in this community and had been here so long. So when I'm out at the grocery store, I see people that we're taking care of on a day-to-day basis. And then, as you mentioned, we got Joe Haas. He's our VP of Sales, Joe Haas Jr. Joe's been with us for 12 years. He's our top producing agent in the office. If you can't find me, go find Joe, or vice versa, right? Like, we're interchangeable. I don't know who's better looking. It depends on who you ask, right? So, Joe, give him a little bit on your background.
I know who's younger. So,
damn.
So I've been with the office for 12 years. Actually got my license 2009, I guess it was. So 17, 18 years ago. Back when I was in college at U of H, but interned and worked at a real estate firm, but was more part-time then. Really got in full swing about 13 or so years ago. Like I said, been here for 12 years. Kind of my obviously I still actively sell, but I also help agents on the team in the office work through different scenarios that inevitably pop up on real estate transactions, because I feel like I've seen it all, but I continue to see new things every day. So just able to part some of my wisdom and stuff that I've learned, so hopefully avoid newer agents having headaches that I had to experience at one point.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, Jimmy, give the audience just a quick little plug right here where Joe is right now, because I think it's important to kind of give people an understanding how Simeon Properties works.
Right. So, we pride ourselves in being a full service real estate agency, and I guess lots of people can claim that. But Joe is literally sitting in a house in Manville. The owner lives out of state. He's actually an attorney, lives out of state. And we're trying to close on the property. There's an AC issue that he had to meet the contractor there. So he's sitting right now at a vacant house, helping manage the contractors coming in and out, the AC guy, and there was a plumber, I believe, that stopped by. So, that's kind of what you get from us is full service, not just open the door, write a contract, see you at closing. We actually are going to meet contractors if need be to help you out in the process. So Joe what time did you get there this morning, Joe?
I've been here since, contractors give you that 8 to 12 window. So luckily, I have my laptop here, so I'm here at the island. So I've just been working this morning and responding to emails and stuff, but I've been here since 8. So I may have to step away momentarily. Yeah. I think the questions with the HVAC company, but I'm here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's get this party started. Jimmy, this is your show, but feel free to cue in Joe as needed if
Yeah.
if you want to pass the baton over to him.
Sure.
This is very very collaborative. I'm also going to be posing questions as they come in. If there's one that's that does, and we can squeeze it in here in the time that we've got. But for right now, one of the big ones that came in, and this was just from multiple people, but also just in general, is around how you should price your house today, because so many people are pricing their house so high, right? They want the most, they want the biggest price they can get out of it, but then they're paying the price later on.
Right.
So how should sellers price in today's market?
Well, first I'll say is I think you should be in the sweet spot. I think we found last year that a lot of people were trying to go high in hopes that people would, go high, and they knew people might come in low and they wanted some room to negotiate. The problem with that is that sometimes the showings weren't coming, right? The apex of your showings, the most showings you get, the market's going to respond to you very quickly in the first 2 weeks, right? So you put your house on the market and you have numerous showings. Okay, great. If you put your house on and no one shows it in 2 weeks, there's a reason. Price, condition. But back to the original question, it's really about being in the sweet spot. That's where we tend to like to be. Joe and I go on a lot of listing appointments actually together. What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You get the a lot of sellers will get the rebuttal. They'll just make an offer. And that just doesn't always happen. And if, for example, you have something that's really should be priced at $450 and they want to list at $480, and buyers, if they wanted to put in an offer at $430, they're looking, it's like, I'm not even going to waste my time. That's $50,000 off what they're asking. Even if the house really is worth closer to $430, they won't even take the time to even see the house or make an offer. So you're losing potential interest. And sometimes people get into a house and they fall in love with it for various aspects, and you just you miss that opportunity to even get someone through the door. So I think you're really hamstringing yourself when you price considerably over market.
I think 2026 though, and Joe, you tell me if you think it's the same thought. 2026 sellers have kind of corrected themselves. They're realizing there's a lot of inventory out there. Buyers have lots of choices. And by the way, I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to the rule. There are certainly houses that we've put out there where I had one in Brook Forest. We pushed the limit and it showed 4 times in 2 hours. And one of those 4 people actually wrote an offer full price. We ended up selling it, but we pushed it to the brink. But again, it's not one size fits all. It depends on the house, the neighborhood, the area, etc. So there are exceptions.
All right. That tees up the next question here that came in multiple times as well too. So let's just assume the price was right, or they got to a point where there was a contract. So we're under contract now and the inspection is done, which can open up a whole other can of worms for people. Where should that homeowner, right, that buyer, what should they be focused on next?
So we generally, first and foremost, well, there's lots of aspects to this. First, we like to start with, the big ticket items, right? We're talking about HVAC, electrical, foundation, plumbing, roof, right? Big components, those generally are issues people are concerned about. So we start there, right? First and foremost. But part of that we teach the agents and talk to our buyers about is, hey, did you get a deal on the house? Did you pay full price for the house? The things you're going to be able to ask for. I'm not saying you can't ask for everything, but no one's going to do everything for you, right? Meaning the seller. If you're buying a 50-year-old house and you send them the whole inspection report and say, hey, I want you to fix all this, it's just not going to happen, right? So we like to educate our buyers from a request perspective on how long has the house been on the market? If it just went on this weekend and there were multiple offers, you may not be able to get as much as you want in terms of repair. So there's different parts of that. There's what we tell people to ask for or what we suggested they ask for. And then there's the component of, okay, but the house was only on the market one day and they had 5 offers. You won the offer. How, I don't want to say cute, but how cute can you actually be? What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of times on the buy side, whoever your agent is representing you, it's critical. You need to be concise and direct with exactly what you're asking for. I see tons of inspection reports every month and repair amendments. And a lot of times, as a buyer, you don't want to just send over walls of text to a seller and just say, fix this, do this. You need to have concise bullet points of exactly what you're asking for. It's easier for a seller to digest, because a lot of times this is where a lot of deals go to die, is during the inspection period, because people get hung up on, they don't understand exactly what's wrong. They assign ridiculous costs to repairs that don't actually exist. It may need to be repaired, but that number they put on it is considerably higher than it actually costs. So I think just having a concise, easy to understand and digest request between buyer and seller makes it for a much smoother process in negotiating during those repairs.
And by the way, the flip side, if the house has been on the market for 6 months, a seller may be more likely to do more repairs, right? So it's one of those things. It depends on the totality of the deal, right? How long has it been on the market? Did you pay full price? Did you get a deal on it, right? Age of the home. And then, of course, the 5, roof, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, foundation. And there's other things too, but it's hard to manage inspection reports because they're 40, 50, 60. I looked at one yesterday that was 87 pages long, and it freaks people out. And you have to really break it down section by section and prioritize what's the most important thing. So that's tough to do, but we have to work through it. And we see people, unfortunately, sometimes they get under duress and they may terminate a contract because it's 60 pages long. But there's ways to work through it, whether it's monetary contribution or having the seller actually fix the items. We generally like monetary contribution because if you're on the buy side, you're hoping that the seller gets the right contractors out there. If you're on the sell side, you're on the hook for the contractor doing the work, right? So not saying we don't do repairs. We can do money, we can do a combination, or they can do the repairs. So
all right, so let's stay on this thread with the inspection report, that whole thing, because as Joe said, there's deals can die at this process because either the buyer is asking too much or they really don't know what to ask for. The sellers get cold feet and they're just wondering, is this going to be a high maintenance transaction and we just need to dip out now? So 2 questions. One is, when it comes to the inspection report as a buyer, what are the top 3 things you would tell a buyer to do when it comes to the inspection report? This is how you should internalize and deal with this and where you should focus your energy. And then 2, address that. Here are the top three reasons that I've seen over and over where deals actually die that you need to be aware of, because we want to avoid that at all costs.
right. Well, HVAC is a huge thing here, right? So are you meaning, let me understand your question. Are you meaning when you say top 2 or 3 things, what do you mean exactly? You mean of the
not
top 5
specific components, but just when they get that 80-page inspection report, like what should they be doing next? What are the top 3 things you would tell somebody, like, this is what you should do with this, and this is how you should move forward, so you don't get tripped up on the stuff that can potentially kill the deal?
So first, I tell people, let's go through the entire report first. Like, don't get hung up in a section just yet. I mean, the 5 sections we talked about, the roof, HVAC, electrical, we're going to go through those, right? So we're going to start there and go through the whole thing. Then what we typically do is just ask the client, how did you feel about the report and what are your hot buttons? Because we always want to put our client first, right? So it's a balancing act between what are your hot buttons and what we see as being the biggest items typically that kill deals, right? So we like to have that conversation first. What are your hot buttons? And I'll be honest with you, electrical for a lot of people, especially if they have children, it's a hot button, right? HVAC is a hot button because it's 100 degrees outside. So our approach is first ask them how they felt about it. And then walk through them based on that information and based on the things I said earlier, which were, did you get a deal on the house? Did you overpay for the house? Like in 2021, well, first of all, in 2021, buyers weren't getting a whole lot of anything. Sellers were getting juiced up on price. Houses listed for 500. Rates were so low, they're at 2.5%, 3%. Buyers are like, I'll pay you $550. Great. Seller was getting their $550, and buyer was like, and you don't have to do any repairs. I mean, people were literally doing no option periods. So you're like, well, why are you saying that? Because it's based on the market. Like the market changes, right? So we're in a market where lots of inventory for buyers. Buyers have options. There are still homes that are selling very quickly. So you have to take the deal into consideration along with the inspection report. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Without diving into the specifics, but you can't just, what you would ask for on the same house in 2021, you may not be able to ask for in 2026.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a great point. It kind of seems like I'm not a real estate expert by any means, but I do understand people. And so I'm going to frame this in a way that I think might resonate with everybody out there who doesn't know what questions to ask when it comes to this. Is if they could just sit back and ask one question, it would be this: what are the must-haves in the inspection report, Jimmy, if you're my agent, and what are just the nice to haves, so I can make sure that I set this self up and I get what I need to make sure that this house performs at the level that I need to. So it's really that lens of what are the must-haves, the need-to-haves, versus what are the nice-to-haves, because my inclination is a lot of people get hung up on the nice-to-haves.
Yep.
And they forget about what the needs are, the must-haves, and that can create some tension too.
Joe, you want to tackle that one?
I missed some of it because I stepped away. I was talking to the contractor, just pertaining to what's important to a consumer.
Yeah, what would be the must-haves versus the like-to-haves if you were working with a buyer, and what would be your approach in terms of, when you're talking to them, and then how we would present back to the listing agent?
Yeah, I heard you touch on some of the stuff, but I think the very first thing when that report comes back is just kind of getting a sense of what their initial thoughts were. Obviously, you have some people that have bought 4, 5, 6 houses. They're not too hung up on the little things because they know home ownership. They know this isn't a big deal, or this just happens. Whereas sometimes you have first-time home buyers that are young and never owned a property before, and they see that a light bulb won't turn on, and they assume that it's a $5,000 electrical bill.
Right.
And it's just not a light bulb. So it's kind of just gauging their temperature, and that'll give you a really good understanding on how you have to approach it, to get them comfortable with the situation, so they understand, hey, this is what we're looking at, and try to make it as easy as possible to digest. So that's kind of the first thing I always like to do. And then, as you were touching on, it's just going through the big ticket items, those big 5 that he mentioned earlier, and trying to really focus more on those things, because those are what's important at the end of the day, and not some of those cosmetic things that can easily be fixed, or very inexpensively.
So, Derek, kind of back to your question, and I don't want it to sound like we're dancing around, because we're definitely not, right? I mean, we do lots of deals, but it's really situational. It's house, situation, client, right? It's case by case, so one size doesn't fit all. And to Joe's point, there are some people who are very well versed in buying houses, and they look at a GFCI plug and they know that's a $10, $12, $15 plug. It'll be more for the electrician to come out than the plug itself cost, right? And then there are people who are first-time home buyers. If they see a 70-page report, they may be freaking out, right? So it's case by case. So it's hard to give kind of a general answer on that. It's really case by case by the client based on our interaction. I mean, this, you're a human-centered design person who gets that. So there's very much more of a psychology in this business than many people think. It can't just be, A plus B equals C. There's a lot of emotion driven, on a lot of emotions on both sides, buyer and seller. And so it's really learning your people you should be learning about your people the day you meet them. You may
Mhm.
not sell them a house for 3 months, but by the time you get to that contract, you should have an idea of, you know what, when we put Bob under contract, Bob's an engineer. This is how Bob is probably going to think, right? And Bill may think completely differently. So it's a little hard to pin it down to one way, but it's we have to be chameleons. But there are just certain baseline things on every house that we're saying, hey, look, this would be what our focus would be, but based on our situation, this would be our approach.
So two things that came out of that for me. One is the next episode, a theme is definitely around emotions with real estate because it's probably one of the most emotionally charged transactions for people that nobody ever talks about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the stuff that can make or break families. It's the stuff that can make or break financial stability. Like there are so many things on the table that people don't talk about. Right. So I think we have a plug for next episode. To wrap all this up in a bow, and then we're going to move on real quick, is what I'm hearing is an approach of triage. Is whether you're working with Jimmy, Joe, whoever your real estate agent is, I don't really care. But at the end of the day, make sure they're helping you triage that inspection report and putting things in the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. Because the must-haves are the things that will break your experience with the house, or they might put you in a financial distress later on, because if the HVAC system goes out, I mean, that's a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 fix, depending on what it is.
Right.
So just be careful about, okay, real estate agent, help me understand, help me triage this report and then must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. So I don't get emotionally wrapped up in the stuff that doesn't matter, because unfortunately that happens all the time.
Right.
Cool. With that said, I'm going to transition over to the next step in this flow, which is actually very natural, is around the closing costs. So you put in the offer, the price was right, you got it to the point you went under contract, you've gone through inspection report, everybody's agreement, now it's starting to move on, and your client says, well, what else do I need to be aware of when it comes to closing costs, and how's that going to affect my final offer?
So we're saying closing costs. Again, this is similar to the inspections, right? Like this is going to be case by case. It's going to be driven by loan product. It's going to be driven by down payment. Are you a VA buyer who gets 100% financing? Are you an FHA buyer who is only required to put 3.5% down? Are you a conventional buyer who can put as little as 5% down, but if you put 20% down, you can avoid mortgage insurance. So there's a closing cost is going to vary based on loan product. Obviously, we like to defer to our loan officers, and we have some great loan officers that we work with. We like to defer to them to give an accurate number. But if we're just talking to them, in the driveway, we're in front of a house, right? And they tell us that they're a veteran, let's say, that's probably the easiest one, don't you think, Joe, to just start with someone who's getting a VA loan. So veterans getting, 100% financing on a $300,000 house. They're able to get up to, generally speaking, they're able to get a 4% max contribution. So on what I say, 300 or 400,000? I don't remember what I said. 400. Let's say 400,000. 400,000. So they can get a max seller contribution of 4% on 400,000. That's 16,000. So a lot of veterans want to be able to get into a house with as little as possible. My dad was a veteran, and he did that himself. So here's the deal: the house is listed for 400,000, and buyer says, "Well, I'll offer 400,000, but I'd like some closing costs." Great, okay. The house just went on the market yesterday, let's say, and you want 4,000 in closing costs. Here's your dilemma, and I don't want to call it a dilemma, but here's what you have to consider. If you offer 400,000 and you ask for 4%, so now you've asked for 16,000 in closing costs. Your offer is no longer 400,000. What you're saying is, I want the seller to give me at closing a credit for 16,000, which then takes their seller's number from 400,000 to 384. Okay. So that's something that when we're talking to people, we have to explain to them, hey, if they're a first time home buyer, they don't understand. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, I just want them to give me, closing cost assistance. Well, great. They're going to give it to you. They're going to move it to your bucket at closing, but now that's $16,000 less they have. So when we're writing an offer on a $400,000 house that just went on the market yesterday, that is a very popular house, we have to factor that in. And now we're probably adding on top of $400,000, which then brings up another issue, which is, can the house appraise for that much, right? So if you went the other way and said, well, I'll give them $400,000, but I want $16,000, I'm willing to add it on top. Now it's a $416,000 offer. That's great, but which is still now a net $400 to the seller. The problem is, will it appraise, right? So there's a lot of, when you're asking for seller contribution, and I know we've kind of gotten into the weeds a little bit, or I've gotten in the weeds because your question is about closing costs. The approach can be, we can roll in your closing costs, which are going to be based on the numbers we get from the lender. Okay. Generally, we know your down payment based on what you've told us. I'm going to put 5% down, 3.5%, 100% financing, whatever. But your closing cost, the number itself, we're just going to tell you if you're escrowing, you're going to have insurance, and that's important in this market, right? I mean, it's important, period. But I mean, where we live, insurance comes into play significantly because we're along the coastline. So insurance comes into play. Is your escrow being set up? So again, a little bit case by case, shall I say, in terms of we're not the ones that tell them per se, this is how much you bring to closing. They get that estimate from the lender. We're just telling them, in this scenario, you can ask for this much in closing cost, or some people don't need closing costs, right? They're just putting their 20% down on 400,000. There's their 80 grand. And then they decided not to escrow. So there's no escrow being set up. They're paying for their insurance on the closing statement. Let's call it $5,000. And then there's some title company fees, miscellaneous fees. So it really depends. And that's why this business is much more complicated than people think, because when you're talking to the consumer, right, you can't just say, this is your closing cost. And I know you know that, but we're trying to help the consumers out there. So it's not a one size fits all.
Well, I mean, I'll chime in. It's like, I don't know if I really know that. Like, listening to you talk, it kind of blows my brain a little bit. Let's just be honest, because what that tells me is there's a lot of stuff that I really don't understand.
Right.
I know what I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff I don't know that I don't know. And hence why I need an agent in the first place,
right,
because a lot of the assumptions and paths that I can take as a home buyer that doesn't understand the dynamics of it all, right, and where things can fall apart. And if you do this is going to affect that. If you ask for this, that can change your, not only the appraisal, but also could affect your end ability to get the proper loan.
Correct.
So, I mean,
right,
there's so many,
all kind of stuff.
Yeah. So there's too many if this, then that dependencies that I don't think a lot of people understand, which can cause some heartache. And I'm sure there's deals out there by other agents that, everybody's been through it, that the deal falls apart because of XYZ. We didn't really think through this scenario.
Right.
And here we are, and now we're about to lose the house of our dreams and the family's crushed.
Yeah.
And because I think there's a lot of people that are listening to this right now that probably have lived through that. And it's not a fun place to be.
It happens. And Joe works with a lot of buyers, and he can tell you when he's having that driveway conversation, maybe he's met a client for the first time. Part of what we have to do is really pin down, like, obviously we're staying in the driveway. We're not going to run your credit in the driveway, but it is having a baseline conversation with them. Now, we don't pounce on them. We meet them, we go through the house, but at a certain point we have that conversation about, what you're thinking, like, are you a veteran or are you a first-time home buyer? There are down payment assistance programs out there. Do you have 20% down? We don't say it like that, but you have that conversation where you pick up on those things. And then at a certain point, we get you over to a lender, which is why it's very important to have preferred partners that you work with. I mean, we have lenders we can refer to, but there are some that are better than others, right? I mean, Joe will tell you that. Like, and some people will say they have their own lender. That's great, and that's good sometimes. And, sometimes, hey, we don't know that lender. We're not going to know every lender, obviously. But so it's it is all encompassing when you're trying to and put a deal together. I can't put your deal together till I know the financial part of it. And so we've gotten away a little bit from the initial question, but it's important to know to be able to answer the question. We really have to know your product profile, meaning you personally, right? If I was repping you, Derek, Big Bank Hank over here, I'm like, Derek's got 20% down, no big deal, So, I'm being funny, but it's just one of the things you have to do on the front end is have that conversation. And sometimes people are very close to the chest, right? They don't say a whole lot. Joe will tell you that some people say nothing about their finances. Nada.
Yeah. So I want to put a plug and some power into buyers and sellers, just everything else, because there's so many times where, as a buyer in particular, seller too, that you feel like you have no control, that you're really at the whim of whatever your agent does, and you're just relying on them, which you should. But as a buyer or seller, take this as a chance and opportunity to take some power back and start asking some hard questions, right?
Yeah.
Step me through the scenarios. If we do that, what am I missing? What are the top 3 things I should know? If I'm going to price my house at this point, like, what are the logical paths that this could go down based on what my goal is? So as a buyer or seller, what I really want you to take away from this, yes, it's the Ask Jimmy show, because he's one of probably the most knowledgeable expert in real estate I would argue in all of Houston. I mean, we can go in the boxing ring with somebody else if we want.
That's why it's Ask Jimmy right now and not ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, that's true.
That's another show.
Yeah. But buyers and sellers out there, is just take this as the opportunity to ask the hard questions. What am I missing? What are the scenarios? What are the things I should know? We go down this path. Where can this lead? And I think a lot of buyers and sellers miss that opportunity because they rely so much on their agent that, doesn't matter how perfect you are as an agent, things get missed. All right. And so the more we're able to have that open conversation up front, the better and smoother things are going to be on the back end.
Right.
I
think the goal. So go ahead. Sorry, Derek.
No. Go ahead, Jimmy.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, and Joe can attest to this. We have many conversations with people about what is your goal, right? Everybody that buys a house, their goal is different. Some people are like, I just need this for 2 years, right? Everybody that sells a house, their goal is different. Some people are in a hurry. Some people are relocating. Sometimes we're dealing with an estate and we're dealing with multiple siblings, right? And the goal, in fact, yesterday, Joe and I went on a listing appointment in the Pasadena area, and that, in fact, is exactly what it was. And 3 of the siblings were there at the table, right? And their goal isn't to give it away. We know that. But the goal isn't also to sit on it either, right? So it's really, and this will be, as you said, maybe another show, that the humanistic, the psychological component. But I think where we as agents have to get it right is really paying attention to that, right? We have to be a chameleon. We have to pick up on that. And I think that's something that if you're looking for an agent, you need to see, are they just transactional? Or are they really paying attention to what my actual needs are, right?
Yeah, because unfortunately, I've had them before. Is that there's tons of agents out there that are just all about the burn and turn, get it through the process,
right?
And transactional. So as a buyer seller, you're just a number in their database at that point.
Yep.
And I know Simeon Properties. I've known Jimmy for years. I've known Joe for years. That's not how you guys operate, which is why I love you and the team. So anyway, enough like boasting and kind of doing a little plug for Simeon Properties, but that's one of the things I really do appreciate. We're coming up on the last question here, and then we'll do some kind of final thoughts, wrap up. For all of you that have been on the call, thank you for that so far. There is one question that came in. I think it was from Maribel or Marianne. About something specific around painting and drywall / wallpaper, and what to do with that. So if you guys could address that for her, that would be great.
Well, Joe, I'm gonna let you address that. But Marianne's one of our existing clients. We just sold one of their rent houses, and I think she's getting her house ready to sell. And she she sent this a couple of weeks ago when we were in the incubation stage of doing this. So go ahead, Joe. Let everybody know what.
I don't have the exact question in front of me, but I know she had alluded to. She was asking about she's getting her house make ready, lived in the home for a long time, and trying to get stuff ready as they're preparing to relocate. And they have some wallpaper in some of the rooms, and just what the best practice is: painting over wallpaper, or removing it, retexturing, and repainting after that. I mean, me personally, obviously, you can go about stuff multiple ways. I mean, I think, just generally speaking, I think it's better to just remove the wallpaper. It's going to be a cleaner look. Sometimes what ends up happening is you can repaint over wallpaper, but if there's been any type of curling in the wallpaper,
right,
I just don't think it's a clean look. But I mean, Jimmy can expound on that.
Yeah, I mean, so same thing Joe's saying. I mean, Joe and I flipped some houses, and we've had some scenarios where we just pulled the wallpaper, right? Like, we didn't try to go over it. But most painters want to pull it, but sometimes that's predicated on what the seller's budget is, right? And that's a whole nother conversation for another show, right? Like, when we go into houses, we're making suggestions, but some suggestions are based on the economics, right? So in general, painters like to pull the wallpaper. Can a painter go over it? Yeah, they can go over it and texture it, but you're still subject to that wallpaper behind there. So I know that, I think we've been to her house. It's right here locally in Clear Lake, and she has some wallpaper in a couple of bathrooms, and she lives in my old neighborhood. And so our recommendation to her is pull the wallpaper. Just know when you pull it, though, that is flat wall sheetrock. Then it now needs to be textured. You don't want to just pull wallpaper and then paint it. It has no texture to it when you do that. Okay. So yeah.
She also asked about removing the old intercom system too and fixing the drywall there.
Yeah. Some of these houses in Clear Lake, if you're in Oak Brook or Clear Lake Forest or Brook Forest, they have the old intercom systems. Believe it or not, some of them still work. Most people don't use them, obviously, but the one I just sold in Brook Forest, I'm pretty certain it had an intercom system. You can leave them. I mean, like, sometimes you create more problems by opening up the wall. I don't think anyone's not going to buy your house because you have an old intercom system that has the old FM AM radio on it, or the push button that you can call little Johnny upstairs. I don't think you have to remove it. Again, this is another conversation on, hey, what should I absolutely do to sell my house, and what would maybe make it next level? So to answer her question, I would pull the wallpaper, retexture, but again, that's all based on a seller's budgetary constraints. And then, nice. And I would just leave because here's the thing: if you remove the little radio and stuff, now you got to patch the sheetrock. Now you got to paint the wall. So it depends, what you want to spend.
And they may come back.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go, Joe.
No, I said in those intercom systems might come back in style. I heard the new flex now is to completely get rid of your smartphone and just live free with not tethered to anything.
Maybe that's how you'll call your kids when they're upstairs, I guess.
Yeah, Joe, you're about to say the same thing. Like, retro's back, baby. So that might be something that increases the value of the home, because now you got a collectible inside.
Yeah,
who knows what else is hiding in the walls, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps us up with the first episode of Ask Jimmy. Without closing remarks, any last thoughts for our listeners? Across Houston. And across the nation at some point, really, because we've gotten some hints for people that want to join this nationally as well. So we'll see. But what closing thoughts do you have, Jimmy, and then Joe, you as well?
I think the one thing you said earlier, like, agents for agents, they need to be in tune with their clients. And for clients, hire an agent who's listening to your needs. Now, it's a two-way street now. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you say something and, if you call and say, hey, I want a $200,000 house on the water, well, that doesn't exist. And so you have to be receptive to hearing what we say. So it's kind of a two-way street, right? Like, hire an agent that is receptive to your needs, but also hire an agent who has the knowledge to be able to I don't want to say push back, but say to you, well, this is what I would do in this scenario. This is what I would do in that scenario. And Joe and them all make fun of me because they'll tell a client something. They're like, man, the clients may not listen to us, but if Jimmy tells them, and sometimes yeah, it's a great idea. Sometimes that's just because, years of experience and people listen to Joe too, obviously. So hire someone. Look, there's lots of agents out there. Hire someone, do your research, go check, hire someone who has good reviews, hire someone who has some knowledge. Anybody can open a door and write a contract. It's everything else in between where it makes a difference.
So what I'm hearing is don't hire a yes man, and you need somebody who's not shy to push back and just give you the reality check. Right. Not about being a jerk. It's not anything else. It's just a reality check. So you as a buyer or a seller don't get in trouble. And that's part of my job, right?
I've told people don't buy. I wouldn't buy this house. Like if they ask me, what's your opinion? I'm like, I'll be honest. There's other options out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that honesty is rare, right? Honesty, transparency is rare, especially in the real estate market. Everybody wants a commission. Everybody wants their check, right? Agents are in the market to make money, and they make money by selling houses.
Right.
Unfortunately, the person gets lost in the mix a lot. Yeah. And luckily that doesn't happen at Simeon Properties. Joe, what last comments, kind of closing thoughts?
I didn't have anything specific to what we talked about today, but hopefully, I know a lot of these are questions that we get the same questions frequently. So hopefully being able to produce more content like this in the video format and answering people's questions can create a little bit of a library of stuff that people can refer to and when they have questions about stuff. So hopefully, I know we've talked about this, doing something like this for a while, and then finally, obviously, coming to fruition. So staying consistent with this, and hopefully viewership will continue to grow, and we can continue to answer questions for consumers out there.
Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. The last plug I'll make for everybody out there is the SimeonProperty.com/the hub. So what there's the hub concierge hotline number that is there, that the reason it exists is primarily for this reason.
Right.
Is to reach out, get advice, get questions. It's not a sales pitch. You're not going to get the cold feeling of an agent trying to do a bait and switch on you. That number is primarily for this purpose of opening up an avenue for people to ask questions and get honest feedback to help them on the real estate journey, regardless if you work with Simeon Properties or not.
Right. That's right.
So use that at your advantage. With that said, Jimmy, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for putting this together.
Thanks for hosting, Derek.
Absolutely. And Joe, thank you for being here as well too. I know you're busy jumping between the house and contractor and all that kind of stuff, and we appreciate your thoughts. Autumn, thank you in the background for all your help pushing this forward. And
right there.
With that, we're going to close episode 1, and we'll see you all next time.